So you're asking them to ignore the law.
I'm not telling them to no. You're the one ignoring the law. What you're doing is coming up with a clever legal device that's never been approved before and never been found to be constitutional in court to get you around Fourth Amendment protections. I'm not the one playing with the law.
In this clip, Chris Cuomo traps former DHS Secretary Chad Wolf into admitting that they bypassed judicial warrants simply because following the law takes 20 years. But keep watching, because the former head of ICE steps in and exposes exactly why they are doing it. Let's watch this together, and I'll share my 2 cents at the end.
Look, it's confusing legal ground, but here's what's not confusing to me. Chad, if your premise were 100% accurate about the locals, crime would not be down there. Serious crime would not be down there, because your idea is, well, they only coddle violent criminals and release them into communities to commit crimes if it's an immigration thing. Otherwise, they arrest them at increasing rates, prosecute them at increasing rates, and that's why the crimes are going down. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm not sure that I buy that logic a little bit, but here's what I'll tell you. ICE again.
Well, what don't you buy, Chad? What don't you buy? Violent crimes is down. So violent crime there is down in exactly the categories of people that you say they're coddling. So how do you explain that?
And I think President Trump has now been in office for a year. He's been very clear about surging resources into big cities, blue states and red states alike, to try to bring this crime down. And I'm glad that it's having a great effect. But again, ICE's mission is not just to remove criminal illegal aliens. It's to remove anyone here that is on a final order of removal, whether you've committed an additional crime here in the United States or not. This idea that we have to wait for folks that are here illegally to commit an additional crime to make them a priority, or to say those are the folks we need to remove, I think is actually the wrong view. You can prioritize those folks, absolutely. But you need to remove everyone that's on a final order of removal. If they've gone to an immigration judge, they've gone to a board of appeal, they've gone through various steps. In all of those, they say you have no legal right to be here. You need to leave the country. Otherwise, we don't have an immigration system, Chris. And if you can hide...
Why didn't you, Chad, find cheats around constitutional protections then when people had final orders? Why did you have a Homeland Security that you never disagreed with when they said, no, you got to have a probable cause warrant. You can't just go into a private house because someone has a removal order. Well, why didn't you change the rules the way they just did?
Well, first of all, I don't think that they're changing the rules on that, so I'm happy to talk about that. We had different problems. We had different issues that we were dealing with in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. So not every, it's not the same set of issues that we were dealing with. As I look forward, though, and I see what DHS is trying to do here, particularly on these administrative warrants, I think it's very important to really, and this is a tough issue, right? It's not an arrest warrant or a judicial warrant, right? You're going to go in and you're arresting someone because you're bringing them to jail. They need to have their time in court. They need to present the evidence and see where it falls. That's not what ICE is doing here. These individuals have already had their time in court. They've already been
but
judged
due process,
to be removed. But they've already had their due process, Chris. They've been to court.
Chad, due process.
They've been to court.
Chad, I'm not fighting your point. I'm adding to it. Due process, yes. When I accord you one right, that does not allow me to take another right from you. Just because I gave you due process does not mean that you no longer have Fourth Amendment protections. It's not the way the law works.
They are hiding behind a door in this case, if they're at their house or anywhere else, on leaving the country. The ICE officers are there to effectuate an order that the judge has already given. It's not in question. It's not that they have another chance to go to court to say, it's not me, you've got the wrong person. They are effectuating an order from the judge to remove someone. They have probable cause. They have an administrative warrant.
Right.
I think DHS is saying here is if I have to get a judicial warrant for the 2 million people on a final order of removal, that's going to take 20 years. They cannot do that.
Chad, come on. Of course they can. Of course they can, because they don't have to remove everybody this way. That's the point. How you do it is a choice structure.
Which law? Let me go back to. So you're asking them to ignore the law.
I'm not telling them to ignore. No. You're the one ignoring the law. What you're doing is coming up with a clever legal device that's never been approved before and never been found to be constitutional in court to get you around Fourth Amendment protections. I'm not the one playing with the law. That is playing with the law. But I hear your argument on it, and I take it in good faith. John, what I don't take in good faith is the panoply of all them together. What other explanation is there that you guys never did these things before? Is it simply because, well, we never had this many undocumented people in the country before, so we never had to change the rules to make it easier to throw them out?
Chris, it's because it's a false narrative, this idea that you either stand for open borders or you stand for convicted, criminal aliens, or this chaos you see on the streets. The Obama administration, we were labeled a deporter in chief. We deported millions of undocumented immigrants, but did it, including millions of people with criminal convictions from the interior, without these images, because this is not about criminals. This is about a mass deportation effort, and this is also about using ICE agents, putting them in a very difficult position that has increased the threats to them and increased the risks of assault to them. Same with Border Patrol agents by having to confront these protesters. But look, the image today, the guy with the 5-year-old kid, he had a court date, Chris. He already had a court date. He was in deportation proceedings waiting for his court date. Why would you arrest them unless you're trying to rack up some stats? But that's not a criminal alien. That's not someone with a final order of removal. And now we created this terrible dilemma where, admittedly, once you arrest him, you've got this horrible situation for the agents with the 5-year-old. But we created that. Why were we there in the first place? There are criminal aliens on the streets. There are gang members on the streets. Arresting them is hard. It's slow. Let's go back to the harder or slower work that has proven successful, that proved successful during Chad's time and my time, that didn't cause this social unrest or this turmoil or frankly, destroy the credibility of ICE as a law enforcement agency.
Chad, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I think it's important to just keep all of this in context, which is the Trump administration is dealing with a crisis created by 4 years of the Biden administration, where anywhere between 15 and 20 million people came into this country. And the voters were very clear that they wanted that to be resolved. They wanted to have President Trump clean that up, not to say, okay, that happened in the past, but going forward, we've got to do something different. They've got an extraordinarily difficult job. I do agree with John on that, to go into these cities to effectuate these removal orders. But it's because we had a historic crisis, which is causing a historic response, which DHS is in the middle of.
The only thing I would push back on is the Biden administration sucked on this issue, okay? Why? I could go on for 15 hours about why. But the idea that it's a crisis because you have so many of them here, I think is a little bit of an article of convenience. I'm not saying I want as many people here illegally as possible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the idea that, hey, we have to do it this way, that I don't know. And I'll tell you this, John, I bet you guys never imagined that the kids in cages wouldn't be the low point in our immigration debate in this country. But here we are. Chad, I appreciate you making your arguments in good faith. You're always welcome here to do so. John Sandwig, you too. Thank you both.
Wow. So there were two devastating admissions in that interview. First, obviously, was Chad Wolf. When he said getting a warrant takes 20 years, he gave the game away. He admitted that the Trump administration views the Constitution as an efficiency problem. They aren't using administrative warrants because it's legal. They are doing it because due process is too slow for the mass deportations they promised. But the second admission came from John Sandwig, the guy who actually ran ICE. Did you catch what he said? He said, "Why would you arrest him unless you're trying to rack up stats?" That explains the 5-year-old. That explains the church raids. They aren't going after dangerous criminals. Violent crime is down, as Cuomo proved. They are going after the easiest targets to pad their numbers so they can go on TV and say they deported millions of people. It's not about safety, it's about high scores, and they are willing to shred the Fourth Amendment to get them. What do you think? Is this about law and order or just political theater? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to see more takedowns like this, hit the like and subscribe buttons and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching.